Tyler, it is great to speak with you, especially because of the film we're going to talk about that is at this year's Toronto International Film Festival. We already talked before we started. Understand why I'm wearing this shirt, and it's celebrating an amazing artist who I have had the honor of interviewing several times on album releases, and his son I also interviewed too. For folks who don't know what we're talking about, what is this great film documentary that is at the Toronto International Film Festival?
Oh, what a lead in, Rudy. This film, Taking Care of Business, is about Randy Bachman, who, for many of your listeners, if they don't know, you soon will, or you soon should, actually. Randy Bachman was in the Guess Who, which had so many great hits. American Woman, These Eyes, Undone, Laughing. And then he was in BTO, Bachman Turner Overdrive, with amazing hits like Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, Taking Care of Business. It goes on and on. So the story is somewhat about him, but moreover, when Randy Bachman was a 14-year-old boy growing up in Winnipeg, he wanted to be a rock star. He wanted to be a musician. And so he bought a beautiful 1957 6120 orange Chet Atkins Gretsch guitar, a stunningly beautiful guitar. And he loved this guitar. It was his muse. It was his favorite instrument. And he believes that it helped him write these hits. It helped him make millions of dollars and write massive gold records. And he loved this guitar. He chained it to hotel toilets. He carried it with him everywhere. This was his Dumbo's magic feather. This was Roy Hobbs' Wonder Boy. But in 1977, at the height of his fame, this guitar was stolen. He left it with a roadie for 10 minutes and it was stolen. And within a year, the band broke up. His wife divorced him. He lost millions of dollars and he never wrote another hit again. And he spent his life trying to find this magic guitar. And he tried to replicate it by buying over 300 Gretsches, and he could never have this magic. At the same time, Randy Bachman was a Mormon. He was a teetotaling Mormon during the sex, drugs, and rock and roll era of the 1970s. And while he was on the road 250 days a year, he was trying to be a father and trying to be a husband. And so he was balancing those two worlds. Now, he spent his life trying to find this guitar. A little bit of a spoiler alert, but if you read the papers, you know this happened. In 2020, an internet sleuth said, I am going to find this guitar because there's a little flaw in the guitar. Yes, there's a metaphor in there, Rudy. And he did. He tracked this guitar down in Japan. A Japanese rockabilly musician had purchased it at a vintage guitar shop 6 years prior, and Randy connected with this person. And I wish I could tell you what happens, because what you think happens doesn't really happen, but it is remarkable, the storyline that follows once he finds this guitar.
This almost is like a Disney movie. How were you able to weave two different stories to become one? And people understand what I mean when they watch this, because it really is two stories coming together.
Very astute of you, Rudy. Yeah, I mean, look, it's one thing to tell a documentary about how somebody makes music and how they create music and how they go on the road. And we've seen those documentaries, and a lot of them are really great. But ultimately, they don't really connect with an individual in, in Ottawa or Chicago or Oklahoma. This film has themes that most, especially men, can relate with. How do I juggle career and family? And whether you're an accountant or a rock star, that's difficult. So I tried to tell the story of how he created these major hits and how Taking Care of Business came out of, a mistake, and how American Woman was conjured from thin air. Literally, like the gods of song came down and gave these words to Burton Cummings from a broken string guitar jam session on stage. So do I want to see those stories? You bet your ass I want to see those stories. but ultimately running a theme of fatherhood, of loss, of emotion and heart through those rock and roll stories was what made the film multi-layered and textured. And that's what I aim to do.
Were there any problems in trying to uh, get the rights to the music, even though he did write them? Were there any problems in getting the rights to the music to be able to use in the film and being able to use the footage that you did also?
God, that footage is amazing, isn't it? So
Yeah.
early in the process, Randy, when he was with BTO, Randy and the band funded a documentary where a documentarian followed them on tour. And this was 1977, I believe.
Mhm.
Uh, and that was directed by a gentleman by the name of Peter Allies here in Canada. And it had never been seen. It had shown once on CBC in the 70s and never again. And it's beautiful 16 millimeter footage of them on tour. And I just salivated looking at it because I knew that that would be a major storyline. So that was easy. We had the rights to that because Randy had paid for it back then. And we were able to use that backstage footage throughout the film. But as for the music, Sony's more than happy to play ball to introduce or reintroduce a bevy of songs made by Randy Bachman to a new generation. So they were happy to release those great iconic hits.
I'm actually wrong when I said there were two stories. There's actually 2.5 stories because his story is told. Because I always wanted to know, because I remember interviewing him when his hit song came out, and I remember the Junos and how well he did. And then literally it was almost like he was gone. I don't want to give too much away, but you answer the question exactly, or he does, and exactly what happened to his career.
Yeah, but also it ties in with the theme of the film. Like he
Yes.
rose to the ranks of a big hit, and he showed just how difficult it is to really stay up there and how difficult it is to have a hit and be in the bigs, as he calls it. And whereas Randy Bachman was able to, have a many at bats in the bigs, Tal just had this one taste of it. And to his own admittance, he just didn't feel comfortable in it. And a big part of that was because he was raised as a very strict, ardent Mormon. And in the film, Randy ostensibly quit the Guess Who when they had a number one song and a number one album because he was a Mormon and he didn't like the partying and road ways of the band. And so, myself being raised as a Mormon, I am no longer a Mormon. I know the weight that is put on a Mormon man and how important fatherhood and family is. And this fatherhood and family is more important than anything else. That includes rock and roll, especially. And so that weight that both Tal and Randy felt because of this somewhat overbearing religion and how difficult it is to make music and stay in the music. So ultimately, that's not just a random story. That is a story that weaves throughout, but also in the end, it aligns with Tal. It aligns with him kind of trying to get back in the bigs himself with his father.
I don't want
And
to
that's a
give
hell of
too
a
much.
song. She's So High is still a great
Oh,
song, man. It is
oh,
still a great tune.
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't want to give too much away, but one of the things that I found, because knowing how many times I've interviewed Randy, seeing his personal struggles being put on screen really made me take a step back and realize just how strong this nicest guy in the world is. Because if you were just to see a picture of him, especially back in the 70s, you would think he's some badass Hell's Angels, whatever. But to know him and to speak with him, and of course, to see this story being told again, such a beautiful person, but at the same time, what strength to go through what he had gone through right up to today.
Yeah, and he's a teddy bear. He is not by any means. And I asked him early in the film, or one of the first question I asked him in the film is, how did this guitar make you a rock star? And he answers with, I don't like the term rock star. I don't ever use it. I'm a musician. And while he created massive hits that influenced many artists after him, he is like the almost the anti-rock star in some ways. Teetotaling, kind of quiet, more interested in music than he is in partying, but has an insatiable need to hold a guitar and to make music. And I'll quote him, and he said, "People ask me what I would do if I weren't a successful musician, and I tell them I would be an unsuccessful musician because that's all I know how to do. That's all I want to do."
Two more questions, because I know we're going to have to wrap this up. One, how did Randy feel about this, and the family feel about it too once they saw it?
Well, I'll tell you what, Randy hasn't seen it.
Oh,
No. On Thursday night at the Roy Thompson Hall, Randy Bachman will watch his life being told on a big screen with 1,800 other people for the first time. Makes me a little nervous, yes. Tal has seen it, although Tal is, he doesn't really like watching himself, so he hasn't really watched it that much, and they haven't seen the finished product. Randy hasn't seen it at all. So, but they were very happy that this story was being told. I did not know them when I came on this project. They watched a few of my projects, a few of my other films. I made another film about a famous Canadian, Amazing Randy, oddly enough, another Randy, the Amazing Randy, who was born here in Toronto. I made a film called An Honest Liar. And they watched that film, and they watched another series I did called Murder Among the Mormons on Netflix. And they said, "You're the right person to tell my story." And that was 3.5 years ago, 3 years ago.
wow.
And here we are. And you know why they haven't seen it? Because it's not finished. We literally finished the film today. Today, it will be finished.
Last question. What do you hope that fans of Randy and Tal, the whole family, what do you hope that they're going to get from this this amazing story?
If you're a fan of Randy Bachman or BTO, you probably know a lot of the stories around how the music was made. You know about the breakup of Kiss Who. You know why he's named Bachman Turner Overdrive. What you don't know is how Randy, after the divorce of his wife, had to choose music or choose his kids over music. You don't know the story of how difficult it can be to be a musician. We hear these amazing stories about how, oh, it's on the road and it's great and I'm making millions of dollars and it's wonderful. But the drudgery of being on the road and the difficulty of being with a band every single day, that I think, maybe brings these gods down just a little bit. And Tal says it, not in the film, but Tal says, like, look, 70s musicians, 70s rock stars were leviathans. They were these titans that walked the earth. They were the Who and Zeppelin and the Stones. These were gods among men that we will never understand today. There's a what, 4 artists that really can fill a stadium nowadays, but back then every band could fill. Bachman Turner Overdrive, they bring in 50,000 people, and so that music, that generation of making music and seeing music, that animalistic quality of rock and roll back then is utterly watered down now. Back then a manager once told me that back then they gave away T-shirts to sell albums, and now they give away albums to sell T-shirts.
Yeah.
And so that era of rock and roll that we cover in the 70s, I hope, if nothing else, they get a taste of what it was like for someone to be involved in that world and be just a normal rock star.
For someone who covered the story when he got his guitar back, for someone who has interviewed him several times, I gotta bow down to you, man. This is a great documentary. I loved it from beginning to end. And before I lose my link, I'm gonna watch it again, just to see if I missed anything. But I was riveted to this. You
I'll
did
tell you what you should
amazing.
do is wait, because you watched a non-finished film that didn't have the score, it didn't have the graphics, it didn't have the color. It's
Oh
a much
yeah,
better film. Sarah, I don't know if we have more tickets. Are you in Toronto?
of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, I am.
I don't know if we have any tickets, and I probably shouldn't be
We have
offering them to
tickets.
everyone, but
Yeah.
there you go. Would you like to
We're
come to the
happy to
premiere on
share.
Thursday?
I would love to come.
Awesome.
Done, because Randy's
There
going to
we
be there.
go.
He's bringing something special.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait to shake your hand too, because like I said, you did an amazing job. Congratulations on this. And I know everybody is going to love it. What a story.
Rudy, you're a very astute viewer and a great question asker. I appreciate you giving us the time. I appreciate you coming prepared in uniform.
Always BTO for life. Thank you again.